pleasure is the reward. But what if it's the disguise? What if the chocolate, the scroll, the lust, the laugh are just shadows, cleverly dressed, masking something far more primitive and far more painful? Let me ask you this. When was the last time you felt full, without needing something more? Not just satisfied, not just entertained, but deeply, profoundly untouched by craving? Because here's the thing. We live in an age of pleasure, but we are starving. Carl Jung once warned that the things we chase for comfort are often the very things that keep us from healing. And today, you'll see pleasure in a way you've never seen it before. Let's begin. Imagine this. You wake up. You check your phone. You don't even know why. There's no emergency, no joy. But the habit is stronger than hunger. A reel makes you smile for 3 seconds. You laugh and forget it ever happened. Then another and another. And somewhere in that infinite scroll, the day vanishes. But the ache doesn't. You put the phone down, maybe eat something sweet or salty or both. Then guilt creeps in. You weren't even hungry. You just needed something. And that something wasn't food. It wasn't dopamine either. It was silence. It was escape. It was a pause in the storm you've never put into words. Let me show you how Jung saw it. He said that every person has a shadow, a hidden self we bury beneath distraction. And pleasure is the shovel. When you eat not because you're hungry. When you scroll, not because you're curious. When you desire, not because you love. You are not choosing joy. You are choosing anesthesia. Here's the painful truth. Most pleasure isn't pleasure. It's relief from self-awareness. But the price is steep. Because every hit of fake pleasure creates a deeper hunger for the real thing. And when we don't get it, we feel broken. We're not. We're just unaware. Unaware that we've been conditioned to mistake escape for enjoyment. Unaware that the pleasure we seek is often a symptom, not a solution. Let me take you deeper. You're 6 years old. You cry. No one listens. So you learn. Feeling bad gets me nothing. But when you smile, when you perform, when you distract yourself, people approve. And that reward sticks. So you repeat it for years, until adulthood, where your pain becomes unspoken and your pleasures become loud, louder than your loneliness, louder than your fears, louder than the child inside you who just wanted to be held. But here's what most people never realize. Pleasure has memory. Every time you use it to silence pain, you wire your body to fear stillness. Stillness becomes unbearable, which is why you can't sit alone, why you need music in the shower, why silence feels like punishment. And Jung knew this. He saw how pleasure, when misused, becomes an enemy of the soul. Not because pleasure is evil, but because we misuse it. The real enemy is the avoidance it allows. Now, before we go further, I want you to do something. If this resonates, if you've ever felt that strange guilt after indulging in something that should have brought joy, subscribe. Not just because it helps this message reach more people, but because you are not alone in this. And comment below. What moment hit you the hardest so far? because it's not weakness to admit it. It's strength to witness it. Now let me show you the trap. Imagine a person walking through a desert, chasing mirages. Each time they run to one, it vanishes. But they don't stop. They think, the next one will be real. That's what pleasure is, when it comes without purpose. And here's the irony. Real pleasure, the kind that feeds the soul, is often quiet. It doesn't demand. It doesn't distract. It doesn't numb. It expands you. It's in a deep conversation. It's in finishing something you feared. It's in waking up and realizing you no longer need the thing that used to control you. But we don't crave that kind because it's not easy. And yet, it's the only kind worth craving. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And pleasure is the most beautiful absurdity we've ever invented. Let's keep going. Let's rewind. You're a child again. You fall and scrape your knee. It stings. You cry. And someone says, "Here, have a cookie. Don't cry." Or, "Stop crying. Look, a cartoon's on." That moment stays with you, not consciously, but neurologically. Your brain learns pain equals punishment, feeling equals weakness. And the solution? Pleasure. So you grow, and without knowing it, you become fluent in distraction. Pleasure becomes your translator. It speaks when you're too afraid to say, "I'm not okay." It dances when you're too tired to admit, "I'm empty." It smiles when all you want to do is scream. But here's what no one tells you. Every time you replace emotion with stimulation, you lose a little more intimacy with your true self. Carl Jung warned, when the inner world is ignored, the outer world becomes louder. And what is pleasure if not the loudest thing in our lives? The scroll, the buzz, the ping, the binge. They scream so we don't have to listen. But listen to what? To this. The ache underneath. The need for meaning. The desire to belong. The wound of being unseen. You see, pleasure is not bad. It's sacred when chosen with intention. But it becomes poison when it replaces presence. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt guilty after pleasure? After watching one more episode? After texting someone you shouldn't have? After buying something you didn't need? After eating when you weren't hungry? That guilt isn't because you did something evil. It's because a part of you knows you weren't really fed. You just avoided the hunger. This is where most people misunderstand Carl Jung. They think shadow work is about becoming darker or edgy. But that's shallow. Shadow work is about looking at the moments you betray yourself for relief and saying, "I see you, and I choose truth over escape." Let me give you a story. There was a person who couldn't stop chasing relationships. They said they were hopelessly romantic. But every relationship ended the same. Intensity, obsession, crash, repeat. And when asked why they couldn't stop, they said, "I just love love." But that wasn't true. What they loved was distraction. Because when they were alone, the silence got too loud. Turns out, they never learned to sit with their wounds. So pleasure became the plaster, until it couldn't hold anymore. This story isn't rare. It's the hidden story of millions. People who confuse longing with love, scrolls with joy, numbing with healing. And the danger isn't that these pleasures exist. The danger is when we never question why we need them. Here's the myth we need to destroy. Pleasure is not healing. Pleasure is not peace. Pleasure is not power. Pleasure is a tool, and tools, when misused, turn dangerous. Let's flip this around. Think of the last time you delayed gratification. You resisted that message, that craving, that click, and later, you felt proud, peaceful. Why? Because discipline isn't just control. It's self-trust. And trust is the real high. Because when you trust yourself, pleasure no longer controls you. You choose it intentionally, fully, freely. That's when pleasure becomes beautiful again. Not a drug, not a chain, but a celebration. Now imagine this. You walk into a room. There's no noise, no phone, just you. And instead of panic, you feel home. Not because you have everything, but because you are everything. That's what Jung meant by individuation, becoming whole, not through denial, not through constant grinding, but through integration, the ability to feel pleasure without using it as a bandage, the ability to enjoy silence without fearing it, the ability to be with yourself and like who you're with. That's the goal. But you can't get there by chasing endless highs. You get there by lowering the volume of your distractions and listening to what they were covering up. So, what does that look like? It looks like noticing when you reach for the phone and asking, what am I avoiding? It looks like letting yourself feel that loneliness without patching it with sugar, with sex, with scrolling. It looks like choosing the slower pleasure, the one that takes effort, that demands presence, that comes with delayed reward. Because here's the hidden truth. Real pleasure isn't instant. It's earned. The best laugh is with someone you trust. The best meal is after a long day of meaningful effort. The best connection is after a conversation where you were seen, not just swiped. Let me give you a moment of pause. If this message has shaken something inside you, good. That's what awakening feels like. It's not grand. It's quiet. It's not dramatic. It's decisive. And the decision is simple. Will I keep numbing the ache with quick pleasures? Or will I meet myself fully, bravely, without needing anesthesia? Carl Jung believed that our neuroses are not caused by trauma, but by our refusal to confront what that trauma left behind. And pleasure, when used unconsciously, ensures we never confront it. But now that you see it, what will you do? Let's go deeper. So here we are. You've heard the warnings. You've felt the tremors of recognition. You've watched the mask of pleasure begin to slip. Now comes the part no one wants to face. The truth that doesn't just sting, it shatters. Because to truly reclaim your life from false pleasure, you must admit something terrifying. You have betrayed yourself, not once, but quietly, daily, over time. Every time you reached for the fast fix, every time you said, just 5 more minutes, every time you avoided the silence because it whispered too loudly, every time you told yourself, this makes me feel good, when really, it just helped you forget. But listen carefully. This isn't shame. It's awakening. You're not weak for doing what you thought kept you safe. You're not broken for craving something that dulled the ache. You were surviving. And now, finally, you are ready to live. Because once you see the loop, once you understand that most pleasure was never joy, but sedation, you no longer chase the same things. The party doesn't hit the same. The scroll doesn't scratch the itch. The hookup doesn't fill the hole. The sugar doesn't soothe the scream. Because the real pain wasn't boredom. It was the absence of self. Let me paint this in a way that sticks. Imagine your life as a house, and inside it lives your wounded child, your ignored truth, your unhealed memory. But instead of entering through the front door to meet them, you build an entertainment system outside. Music, lights, candy, comfort. You throw a party in the yard while your inner child waits, unseen. That's what unchecked pleasure does. It builds a carnival outside your house, so you never go inside. But healing, real healing, is walking through the silence, stepping inside the house, sitting with the child, and saying, "I'm here now. You can speak." That's the work Jung spoke of. He didn't want people to become addicted to stillness. He wanted them to become unafraid of it, to know that silence isn't the absence of life. It's the presence of everything we've avoided. Now here's the climax, the final myth that must be broken. You've been told that pleasure is the goal, that happiness means feeling good, that the more you indulge, the more free you are. But freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about not needing to. True pleasure is not the chocolate, not the phone, not the ego stroke. True pleasure is the moment you realize you no longer need to be distracted from yourself. You can sit in the stillness and smile, not because it's empty, but because it's full of presence, full of truth, full of power. You become the kind of person who doesn't chase the high, because you already carry the peace. And people will notice. They'll say you've changed. You'll speak slower, pause longer, laugh less frequently, but more deeply. And they'll ask, "Why don't you drink as much? Why are you off social media? Why don't you text back right away?" And you'll smile, because they won't understand that you're not avoiding anything anymore. You're simply present. That's what scares most people. Because when someone stops needing pleasure to feel okay, they become powerful, uncontrollable, undistracted, unmanipulable. Pleasure no longer lures them. Marketing doesn't hypnotize them. Addictions lose their teeth, because presence has returned. And presence is the purest form of rebellion. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And who you are is not a dopamine addict. You are not a bundle of cravings. You are not a consumer of feelings. You are a creator of meaning. And meaning is not always pleasurable. In fact, it rarely is. It's demanding. It's exhausting. It's inconvenient. But it is real. And it will feed you in ways pleasure never could. So the next time the craving hits, pause. Not to fight it, not to shame it, but to ask, what do I truly need right now? That question alone can change your life, because it breaks the loop. It hands you the pen. It reminds you, you are not your hunger. You are the one who chooses how to feed it. So let me leave you with this. You'll never look at pleasure the same again. Not because it's evil, but because now you see it clearly. You'll still laugh, still love, still enjoy the sweetness of life. But you'll do it with awareness. And that awareness will protect you from trading your peace for temporary comfort. It will make your joy sacred, your relationships cleaner, your habits stronger, and your silence golden. Because the pleasure you don't need to chase is the only kind worth having.